All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brandon Arvin and John Kreutzer, and this is the third episode of the Smoking Lamb Scholars. So full disclosure, uh, we tried this yesterday, and after probably John and I talking for an hour about how to get a real estate license, the pros and cons, and all those great things, we realized that there are some topics you can just talk too long about. And this probably being one of them. So instead of boring everyone with here's how to get a real estate license, here's the very unique and specific study habits that John and I have whenever we got our real estate license, we found it a little better to just let's just hit delete and let's just start over. So I say this is the third episode, but if you factor in all of the mistakes that John and I have made when just trying to do this podcast, we're probably like episode 5 or 6, but we're not going to bore you with the mistakes and having you watch something that we wouldn't even watch ourselves.
Right, but the good news is we have a lot of material for outtakes or bloopers. So if we ever
Already.
do want to put together a blooper reel, man, we've got some serious
We
material.
have as much material for a blooper podcast as we do for a legitimate podcast. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a real thing. So without further delay, this episode is really going to cover getting a real estate license. And what I hope to get you guys grab from this is, why would somebody want a real estate license? Why would someone need one? How to get a real estate license? Because there are several different venues, whether it's in person, whether it's online through distance learning, or whether it's some type of blended to where you do both, right? Maybe with a seminar style. But considering that, John, you just got your real estate license, what, like a year ago?
Yeah, we're
Um,
coming up on nearly in the 2 year mark.
yeah, so you were in you being somebody that got the real estate license because it was I won't say necessity, but your life was a bit turned upside down a little bit, and you originally had plans for a really long Marine Corps career, and then, well, I don't want to take it away from you. Like if you don't mind sharing with everybody, like what drew you to real estate, and if you don't mind, to the degree to which you're comfortable, talking about maybe some of the personal things that you were going through at the time.
I'm happy to speak to that, but like I said, we want to respect the time, so I won't get too into the weeds. I think my shortcomings and failures and challenges could probably like a series of podcasts, but we'll keep it short and sweet today, just like you. Uh, Vertically challenged. All right, so I had some things happen in my life. I was after multiple combat deployments, and then probably a decade and a half of dealing with some of that very poorly, and not going through some of the treatment or steps to kind of reconcile PTSD. I was at a point where I was kind of given the option, we'll call it that, of medical retirement. So on a med board. So I was at a point where I wasn't really satisfied with what I was doing. Um, Probably a lot to do with like a 38-year-old, 40-year-old ish service member having like a midlife crisis, like where do I go, what do I do, um, and some of the perks to the medical retirement. It was nearly right in line with doing the full 20. So I went down that route, and going down that route, I was like, well, I'm in Okinawa, Japan, so I need to figure out. By the way, the med board process is not a quick process, so I was looking at between 8 to 14 months to have this thing all shored up. So I started exploring different avenues of career paths, and going back into government service. Like that wasn't in my top 5 or even 10. as it turned out, I just really liked looking at houses on Zillow. I loved looking at different properties, and then that got the idea, well, maybe I should start exploring this real estate gig. Um, and After some cursory research, listened to a couple different podcasts, that this was something that I'd be very interested in, and it was a great transition or potential transition from military into a second career, knowing that I would have some type of, whether it was a disability pension plus the insurance, so I wasn't walking on a tightrope without a safety net. Entering a new career field, there would be some of that safety net there.
Okay. Um, I think you make some good points there because everyone will get out of the military, right? Everyone will leave their first responder career, right? Nobody plans to do that until the day they die. There will be some form of transition out, and you have to find a way to still meet your financial and your familial obligations. And I think it's a really important point that when life can, show up in various forms, you found a way that to continue to provide for a family, to continue to pursue things that you enjoy. And you mentioned Okinawa, Japan, which is, I think, really important part there of like, hey, how are you going to get the education, the certification, the licensure for this new career when you're not even in the United States, right? Let alone the state in the United States that you plan to pursue that career. So, I mean, this seems like a just a easy transition into how did you start, right? Like you figured out you knew what you wanted to do, but then where does one start, especially finding themselves in Okinawa?
Right. So the way I had envisioned a real estate course going is to show up to some kind of, not a community college, but some type of like venue where there's an instructor. So I started using the old Google machine. I found this great website. It's called The Close. So that's going to be Charlie Lima Oscar Sierra Echo, theclose.com. And a guy named Chris Linzel runs this website. And within my searching, there were several articles published about the top 10 pre-licensing education courses that you can go through, the companies that put on these courses, and some of them are even state specific. So because I planning on retiring in Texas, that was just the natural venue to gravitate towards. So in my study habits, I have to have books. I like hard copy books. So the particular course that I chose, they sent me, 2 300-page books in addition to the online course material. So going to that website and figuring out like which course matches up to your study habits, I think that's very valuable. I learn a certain way, and that's probably dates me a little bit, with the hard copy stuff. But the other advantage to that is, if you're on ship or if you're overseas and maybe don't have regular connectivity, the books are great. For some folks, that's not going to be a deal breaker, but for me, the price was right. And you can get into the real estate licensing game for anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, depending on all the bells and whistles. So take some time, shop around, figure out which one works for you, and then definitely go to the Real Estate Commission's website for the state that you're interested in pursuing this license, and ensure make sure that particular state's commission recognizes those courses. And the Close is a really great resource for that because it's a website for real estate agents by real estate agents, and they cover national topics. So
Yeah, no, I definitely think like there's something else I think that's unique to those real estate commission websites that they'll even share with you like the different educational providers,
right.
right? And it will actually show the percentage of those applicants who have passed their real estate, exam on the first try,
And that's
right?
huge,
Very,
right?
it's really valuable. And I won't say that like that should be all that matters on who gets what school. I mean, you mentioned of like the type of study materials, whether it's going to be hard copy books or whether it's going to be a lot of PDFs, right? Or it's going to be in person, right? For those who are fortunate to be local wherever they plan to practice. But I think using that real estate commission's website definitely give you a pretty good idea of this is where the majority of people are migrating towards this particular provider. In addition to they have a higher batting average than others.
And even if you're not considering real estate as like your immediate transition from military to civilian life, I've got four in particular really good reasons why anybody, whether you're a first responder or military, should get into real estate. I got a couple one-liners like
Yeah,
to
no, that's a
share.
good point. Like, you don't
Right.
have to want to be a real estate agent, hitting the streets every day, finding buyers and sellers. I think to make it good, I would think that you don't need to be that in order to justify, let me get my real estate license.
Absolutely not. So, and the first one is my first reason is to be home ownership, right? So, again, if I could go back in a time machine, hit 88 miles an hour, and uh, you know, present my 25-year-old self with the information I have today, I'd definitely be a richer man. This home ownership, right? So, owning your own home, it can be a very daunting endeavor. However, if you have this education, it's going to cost you between $1,000 and $1,500. It's going to pay dividends exponentially, right? So buying a house is probably, if not the largest investment you're going to make in your entire life, with the average house in the United States costing $300,000. We hear a lot about due diligence, and then let me bring up a current event. The Sam Bankman-Fried, people investing in this guy, they had no idea what this guy was all about, where he came from, and due diligence was brought up. That really wasn't done. So do yourself a favor. If you're considering owning a home before embarking on a over $250,000 investment, spend the 90 days and the $1,000 it takes to get this license. That sort of segues into the second reason. If you are interested in real estate investing, this is something you definitely want for a number of reasons. One, there's a lot of math problems that as a real estate agent, you're going to face, and one of them is comparable values. So if you need to figure out if this is a good buy or not, a good deal or not, this is one of the basic math problems they're going to cover. They're going to cover how to do this for all your pre-licensing coursework, and it's going to save yourself, even if you're not a practicing real estate agent. It's going to save yourself and the agent that you're working with a lot of time, because you're going to know specifically what you want and what price range you want it for, and why you want that. And that's going to better enable that real estate agent to go find deals for you from an investment perspective. Additionally, it's also a way to hold that real estate agent accountable, because once they realize that you're speaking the same vernacular as them, I'm not going to say that let me just rephrase this. I think they're going to be a lot more accurate, or make an attempt to be more accurate in everything they say, because they're going to know this person's going to go check my math. They're going to check the work and ensure that we're on the same track.
Well, I think most real estate agents, if I want to look at the glass half full, most real estate agents are honest, hardworking. They're just trying to get out there and provide for their family or pursue, their dreams, right? But I think a point that you make is that for that small minority that maybe is not as genuine, right, or doing everything for the right reasons, by having your real estate license, it almost quietly and unspokenly, like it forces a bit of transparency when that person knows that you speak a similar language to them in places where maybe they would otherwise not be as transparent. It would force them to be more transparent with you because you have your real estate license as well.
Right. I don't want that to come off the wrong way. It's more, I mean, everybody's real estate agents are very hardworking. They probably have several irons in the fire, but when they know, hey, I'm going to pick up Brandon's iron and work that iron, I'm going to make sure that I clearly communicate what's going on, because he's going to, if for some reason I'm inaccurate, he's going to call me out. So whether it's, just juggling a lot of things or, okay. So the other reason, for the practical application of becoming a real estate agent, obviously this is something you'd have to do. However, I'll go to my fourth reason. How do you know you like something? How do you know you're going to be into something? I can tell you that when I was in college, I spent a semester studying computer science, which I thought, oh, computers are going to be great. There's a lot of math. I didn't know that. So I spent an entire, let me say 2 semesters, studying something that I wasn't going to pursue. And then I lost credit for certain classes. Thankfully, it was my first year of college. But just to spend money on education, then to realize it's something that you really don't want to pursue, that can be quite costly in terms of time and capital. But getting your real estate license, or at least pursuing that and exploring it, it allows you to dip your toe in the water, immerse yourself in this this occupation field, or testing it out for, like I said, the 90 days about that it takes to get this. And through the course of preparing for that license, you can determine, like, is this something that I can get into? Is this something that I'm going to be interested in? Or is this something that's like, I thought it was one thing and it turned out to be another? So vice spending semesters and tens of thousands of dollars to realize that you don't want to be a computer scientist or a chemist, this is a much softer, less financially risky investment in your time to figure out if it's something you want to do or not do.
That makes sense. I think it's I agree with you, that like you don't have to want to be, a practicing real estate agent for the rest of your life, and that doesn't need to be the only reason that you would pursue any type of education getting your real estate license.
Right. So moving on, and I guess if we want to get down to the brass and tacks of this, as far as being able to do this from Okinawa, I'd like to spend some time speaking to that.
Yeah, I was wondering also, like, I think that'd be really important to talk about how you did it, from not just afar, but way afar. But if you don't mind, just kind of covering, I'm sure it's probably different state by state, right? Just giving an idea of like, what's the curriculum like, right? You talked a little bit about, generating, comparative market analysis. But what's also, if you don't mind, tying into like, what's the curriculum like for those that have no idea?
Okay, so I guess I'll partition it at the biggest point. So regardless of what state you're getting licensed in, there's a national level standard. And this is universal across all 50 states. And then each state has a more nuanced material. These are all in the same test, but even the licensing test itself, there's a national portion vice a state portion. The primary topics this is going to cover, there's a lot of legal terminology, right? There's a lot of legal terminology in terms of something like tenancy in common. What happens if a property owner doesn't have a will and it has to, the property then escheats to the state. So there's a lot of very specific terminology that you may hear it on a regular basis, but in the lexicon of real estate and legal jargon, this means something perhaps completely different.
One that always stood out for me is the word consideration.
Yes.
Like consideration, like as we may use it on day to day, is something, that a generous person is just a considerable person. They consider others. But learning that consideration is very much it's a legal term for the exchange of something that's valuable,
right,
or something that you're providing that's valuable. of all the real estate contracts I'd looked at as a buyer or a seller, I never knew what that word would have meant. And now it makes me look like, okay, like now I know how to read those contracts, right?
I
That I'm
think,
signing my life away to.
and that's a huge another I should have brought up earlier, but that's another thing is when you're going to make a mortgage or engage in a mortgage, which is a death pledge. I think that's what it means in Latin. Um, you ought to be able to read every line of that contract and know exactly what you're getting into. Because you may miss a line that says we're going to remove all the light bulbs. Seller will remove all light bulbs and whatever. And if you just gloss over that, you show up and like, why don't the lights work? Oh, they took all the doors because that was you didn't read the contract, did you? You just hit initial on DocuSign.
Right.
So again, going back to why have this license instead of blindly hit initial and hope that everyone's looking out for your interest. You owe it to yourself to really know line by line what's going to happen. So yeah, legal terminology, ethics. There's a lot of actually. I really learned something. The ethical portions of the course material that certain racial groups were discriminated against in the past in terms of lending practices, in terms of real estate agents steering them to a particular neighborhood or steering them away from a particular neighborhood.
Yeah, a lot of congressional acts are covered within the pre-licensing material.
As well as the type of loan. So you have your Fair Housing Act loan, you've got VA loans, you have traditional loans, and then there's even an investment side, like how to form a syndicate, like an investment syndicate, not a crime syndicate, and what all these things mean. So, in full transparency, it's not the juiciest, most exciting material ever, but you walk away from that with a completely different view on what do these words mean? What does this mean when we're in syndication? What is a non-paying tenant, or rather tenancy at suffrage? That's when someone's just kind of shacking up at your house without paying the bills.
Water.
Right. So I hope that answered your question. I know
You did. Yeah, no, it was really helpful. I think just kind of like an idea of what is the curriculum.
Right. So how do I do this from Okinawa, Japan? And depending on which licensing company the education company that you go with, the coursework that I chose was all online. Every module out of 6 modules was a proctored test. However, that proctor was like a third-party service. So I just set up my phone, take the test, boom. I've done, and I like that for a couple of reasons because it held me accountable. But again, depending on your study habits, you can figure out what works for you. As it turns out, the Texas Real Estate Commission uses the same proctoring service as the United States Air Force. So for my Okinawa peeps that are familiar, I was able, while living on Camp Victorious, doing my my real estate coursework by day, swooped on over to Kadena Air Base, and just like I was going to take any other test like a CLEP for college, I was able to enroll in this for the Texas Real Estate Commission. Showed up, took my test, results the same day. They don't tell you how well you did; they just tell you pass or fail, which I guess that's an indicator how well you did. And the pass, I think the required score is 80%. So if those are familiar with Marine Corps tests, 80's gravy. Thus is the same for the real estate test. And even from there, I was able to go to the Provost Marshal's office on Camp Foster to do my fingerprints for the background investigation. Because for those who don't know, there is a sizable background investigation that's done before you receive your real estate license. And they're really particular about if you've ever committed financial crimes or anything involving fraud. Those are
Can't imagine why.
Can't imagine why. If you have a fiduciary duty to someone, that financial crimes are frowned upon. So yeah, it shouldn't be lost that Sam Bankman-Fried probably won't be getting his real estate license anytime soon. So for those of you that are about to go on ship, if you're about to get PCS orders to Okinawa, or you're currently in Okinawa, you're somewhere overseas and you want to explore real estate, do some research, hit us up in the comments, and maybe we can help vector you somewhere that worked well for us, or we know someone who, say is licensed in Idaho. I don't know anything about where to start in Idaho, but among our network, I'm sure we could find somebody to answer those questions. And at the end of the day, 90 to 120 days to get this license, where there is no salary cap. So you can make, you can make a lot of money, knowing there's also no salary cap. There's also no salary floor. So for those, for veterans who are at least have some type of VA disability pension, for military members who are retired or considering retirement, this is a great occupation to get into, because you do have that safety net. I don't want to discourage people who have done 4 years and getting out not to do it. That's a whole nother podcast as to why, or another episode as to why service members would make great real estate agents. But I guess the brightest torch that I bring, today, is that this is totally attainable, totally doable. It's not going to cost you a lot of money or a lot of time. And whether you're buying a home to live in, that's just still going to be one of the greatest investments you make in your lifetime in terms of financial responsibility and money, in terms of amount and dollar sign. Whether you're just doing that, or you want to explore real estate as a viable second career, or even a side hustle as an active duty service member, this is totally doable. On ship overseas, you don't have to sit in a classroom for 6 hours a night, and there are ways that you can even take these tests while overseas and get everything done.
Yeah, and I think you've already made it seem very attainable for someone that's in Okinawa. I can tell you that for me, like having the privilege of being in the United States and doing it, I was able to, within just over 30 days, right, finish all the pre-licensing coursework. After it's all said and done, I'll be in about $600.
Dude, that's amazing.
To get, so 30 days, $600, being like out the door. And you can still do that with a full-time job. Now, I don't want to pretend that if I was a police officer or if I was an EMT, that I would have the time or even the mental stamina, right, to come home off of a shift and to listen to someone talk to me about different types of estates and like attorney speak for what this estate means versus that estate, and then inherit, whether it's a right of inheritance or right of survivorship. I don't want to pretend that I could do that. But for those that maybe you are in an instructor billet, right? And you're not as operational. Maybe you're a first responder and you finally got an opportunity to ride a desk for a little bit, right? And for those that may be seeming a little down about that because you're being taken away from something, I found that by reinvesting that time into yourself, you're not going to get that time back, right? So taking a little bit of time to yourself, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, spending a little bit of cash, right? Anywhere from, I said mine 600 to John, like you said, like could be 1,000, 1,500. Reinvesting into yourself, I think you'll find that anytime you invest in yourself, it's a good investment. The ROI is going to be much higher than if you were to invest it by doing something that would perhaps just distract you from being more successful.
Right. And I don't want it to be lost that this all happened, me pursuing this real estate license during COVID. So COVID in Japan, everything got locked down. They were, you were either deemed essential or non-essential. And I'm going to use the air quotes here, you teleworked from your house. So a lot of people probably invested in, binge watching Dancing with the Stars.
Tiger King.
What's that?
Tiger
Yeah,
King.
Ty. Yeah, Ty. This was the this when Tiger King came out. Um, so I used that opportunity to figure out, is real estate something I'm going to be interested in doing, and it's paid dividends. I'm really glad that's an avenue that I went down. And anytime you have the opportunity to learn something, especially something that's it's not going to cost you uh, you know years of student loans. It's not going to cost you semesters upon semesters. It's a very simple thing to do, and most people at some point want to be a homeowner, or they want to have several homes. And this is just such getting that real estate license is such a great way to just dip your toe into that proverbial water before you make any major decisions. And you owe it to yourself. If you're a U.S. service member, veteran, if you're a police officer, first responder, I mean, you earn that paycheck day in and day out. So you owe it to yourself before making an investment, um, to follow through with that due diligence, and ensure that you're doing right by yourself and your family. So
Yeah, and I think as we wrap up here, I think we're going to have a really great opportunity next time we get together to have a guest come on and talk about like how he was able to take such an opportunity, and I don't want to be careful not to share some of his story because no one will be able to share it the way he does. But he had, life hit him really hard. Uh, Frankly, just punched him in the face. And in my mind, like the absolute worst thing that could happen um, happened to him, and he had to deal with it. And when he was looking for the type of industry that would give him the flexibility to still take care of his family, and like you've alluded to, John, like the barrier of entry for real estate is not that high, right? Comparatively, it's pretty low. And he was able to transition from the Marine Corps under what I think to be the worst of circumstances, yet become hyper successful, right? By translating those skills that he took from the military and the work ethic he took from the military. And now, I mean, he's been doing this for nearly a decade. And I don't want to spoil it because he's got a story that I think is pretty uplifting for anybody that has an opportunity to listen to him. But I'm really looking forward, if you can't tell, right? I'm looking forward to next episode when we take things out of the hypothetical, right? Of like, here's what you and I are talking about, like, hey, these are things that you could do. And we actually get to talk to somebody that says, no, I did it.
right.
Like I did it and I'm doing it. And the cards were stacked against me. But here's how I was able to make a great life for my family.
Right, and so this also shouldn't be lost. But if I'm going to offer a parting shot, we talk about you mentioned the barrier of entry. So top 1% real estate agents can garnish the same salary as a surgeon or as a lawyer, but without that student debt, without you know a decade of education. Um, Again, that's top 1%, right? That's the top tier guys. So it is possible to have a phenomenal income without having spent a phenomenal amount of time at university, or a phenomenal amount of money. So I think that's as far as what I can bring to the table today, and then respecting our time, that would be that'd be a good thing to leave with.
All right. Sounds like we found a natural stopping point. Um, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. I know we have different experiences, and you're much further down this path than I am. But I mean, to me, it's something I think is really helpful just to know, like, hey, not only like, hey, here's how you can get into real estate, but it's actually not that difficult to get the license. Doesn't mean like being a real estate agent is easy, but getting a license is not that hard.
Right, and
Um,
I just
yeah,
remember this. I spoke about uh, why I initially began to explore this. because my life was about to shift some serious gears to an early medical retirement. I had to shift gears again because I was found fit for duty. So,
But you didn't
I,
lose anything.
no, I gained
Oh,
a great education. In fact, I bought a house in Texas thinking I'm going to live here, and now I have a very nice piece of passive income. And that, again, another time. But what I thought was going to be a mistake or a surefire thing, which I had to shift gears on, ended up being an outstanding opportunity and a really great investment.
yeah,
So I didn't want to leave that open. I wanted to shore that up before we closed out, Brandon.
right. Well, until we see each other again, appreciate your time, John. Everybody, this is Brandon Arvin, John Kreutzer. This was the third episode of the Smoking Lamp Scholars. Make sure you come back next time. You're going to hear from. It's going to hear you're going to hear a great story, and a phenomenal, uplifting success story.
I love
So
those,
until
man.
then, we'll see you guys again.
All right. Bye.
Bye.